Ian wiped the same spot on the hospital floor for the third time, his hands trembling not from exhaustion but from the voicemail he'd played 6 times in the supply closet. A lawyer's voice, clinical and distant, speaking words that didn't make sense. Inheritance, biological father, significant estate. Ian had scrubbed floors for 8 years, raised his daughter Lily on cafeteria leftovers and thrift store clothes, never knowing his own father's name. Now someone claimed that stranger had left him everything. But Ian knew better than to trust good news. In his world, unexpected calls meant someone always wanted something back. Before we dive in, make sure to hit subscribe and leave a comment. Where in the world are you watching from? The mop bucket wheels squeaked against the linoleum with a rhythm Ian had long stopped hearing. 3rd floor, pediatric wing, always the hardest. Not because of the mess kids were surprisingly neat compared to the adults down in emergency, but because of the sounds that leaked through the walls. Tonight, it was room 312. A soft crying that could have been a child or a mother. Ian had learned not to look. He pushed the bucket past the nurse's station, nodding to Cheryl, who was finishing her shift notes. She'd been kind to him since he started here 8 years ago, always saving him a sandwich from the staff fridge when the day stretched long. Ian. She looked up from her charts. Your phone was buzzing in your locker earlier, figured you'd want to know. His stomach tightened. Lily's school never called this late unless, thanks. He finished the hallway in record time, muscle memory guiding the mop while his mind raced through possibilities. Detention, bullies, the field trip money he couldn't afford to send. At 14, Lily was old enough to walk herself home from school, old enough to heat up the dinner he'd left in the fridge, old enough to pretend she didn't notice when he counted coins for milk money. The janitor's closet smelled like industrial cleaner and old coffee. Ian pulled his phone from his jacket pocket, hands already reaching for the familiar weight of worry that lived in his chest. 3 missed calls. 1 voicemail. The first 2 numbers he recognized Lily's school and Mrs. Rodriguez from next door, probably calling about the rent again. But the 3rd number was local but unfamiliar. The voicemail timestamp showed 3:47 p.m. He pressed play. Mr. Thompson, this is Jonathan Hartwell from Hartwell Associates. I'm calling regarding the estate of Robert Franklin Thompson. I understand this may come as a surprise, but we have documents indicating you may be a beneficiary. It's rather urgent that we speak. Please call me back at your earliest convenience at 555-127. Ian stared at the phone. Robert Franklin Thompson. The name meant nothing. Should it mean something? He played the message again, holding the phone closer to his ear, as if proximity might make the words make sense. Estate. Beneficiary. He'd grown up in foster care, bounced between homes until he aged out at 18. No family trees, no genealogy websites, no father's name on his birth certificate. Just unknown in neat social worker handwriting. His hands were shaking. The phone rang. Daddy? Lily. Relief flooded through him. Everything okay, baby girl? Yeah, I'm fine. I was just You still at work? Just finishing up. You eat dinner? Uh-huh. The pasta thing you made. It was good. She was lying. Lily always said his cooking was good even when they both knew it wasn't. Even when it was mac and cheese from a box for the 3rd time that week. I'll be home in an hour. Okay, hey Dad? Yeah? Jessica's mom is taking her shopping tomorrow. For winter clothes. She asked if I wanted to come, but I told her no because... Because what? Silence stretched between them. Ian closed his eyes. Because we don't have money for clothes right now, I know. The words hit him like they always did. Lily never complained, never threw tantrums about what they couldn't afford. At 14, she had the resigned wisdom of someone twice her age, and it broke something in him every day. Lily? It's okay, Dad, really. I don't need new clothes. But she did. Her jacket was too small, showing her wrists when she reached for things. Her shoes had holes he'd tried to patch with electrical tape. Winter was coming, and he hadn't figured out how they'd manage the heating bill and warm clothes. I love you, kiddo. Love you too. See you at home. The line went dead. Ian stared at the lawyer's number on his phone screen. Estate. Beneficiary. He'd learned long ago that good news was usually a mistake, and unexpected money always came with strings attached. But sitting in a supply closet that smelled like bleach, thinking about Lily's outgrown jacket and the resignation in her voice, he dialed the number. It rang twice. Jonathan Hartwell speaking. This is Ian Thompson. You called me. Mr. Thompson, thank you for calling back. I hope you don't mind me reaching out so late in the day, but this matter has some time constraints. Are you familiar with Robert Franklin Thompson? No. He passed 3 weeks ago. According to our records, he was your biological father. The words hung in the air. Ian gripped the phone tighter. That's impossible. I understand this is unexpected. Mr. Thompson Robert left very specific instructions in his will. DNA confirmation was conducted using samples from your medical records at the hospital where you work. You did what? It's all been done legally, I assure you. The hospital has strict protocols, but when there's significant estate matters involved— How significant? Silence on the other end. When Hartwell spoke again, his voice had shifted into something more careful. Mr. Thompson, I think it would be best if we met in person. There are documents you need to see. Decisions that need to be made. Would tomorrow work for you? Say 10 a.m.? Ian looked around the closet. Mops hung like sentinels against the wall. A lifetime of night shifts and scraped-together rent money surrounded him. Mr. Thompson? Yeah, 10 a.m. Where? My office is downtown, 418 Pine Street, Suite 700. And Mr. Thompson, you might want to arrange for childcare tomorrow. This conversation could run long. The lawyer hung up before Ian could ask what that meant. He sat in the quiet closet for a long time, phone still pressed to his ear even though the line was dead. Through the walls, he could hear the hospital's night rhythm-soft beeping, distant conversations, the whisper of nurses' shoes on linoleum. His whole life, he'd been nobody's son. No father's name, no medical history, no stories about where his stubborn streak came from or why he was good with his hands. Just Ian Thompson. A name assigned by social services because someone had to write something on the forms. Now, apparently, he was somebody's son after all. A rich somebody, if lawyers were involved. Ian stood up slowly, joints protesting from the long shift. He had 3 more floors to finish before he could go home, and Lily would be waiting up even though she'd pretend to be asleep when he checked on her. But first, he needed to figure out how to tell his daughter that everything might be about to change, if it was real. If it wasn't some elaborate mistake or scam, if he could trust that for once, maybe, good news was actually good. The mop bucket wheels squeaked as he pushed it back into the hallway. Same sound as always. But somehow tonight it felt different, like the beginning of something he wasn't sure he was ready for. The law office smelled like leather and money. Ian had never been in a place where the carpet was thick enough to muffle footsteps, where the receptionist's desk cost more than his car. He'd worn his only good shirt, the one Lily had ironed for him that morning, without being asked, but still felt like an imposter. Mr. Thompson? The receptionist's smile was professional and distant. Mr. Hartwell will see you now. The elevator was silent except for the whisper of expensive machinery. 7th floor. Ian watched the numbers climb and wondered if he was making a mistake. Lily had asked why he needed the morning off, and he'd told her he had an appointment. Not a lie, exactly, but not the truth either. She'd looked at him with those 2 knowing eyes and said, "Is everything okay?" "Everything's fine, baby girl." Another lie. Everything was confusion and sleepless nights, and the strange, desperate hope he was trying not to feel. Jonathan Hartwell looked exactly like Ian had imagined. Silver hair, expensive suit, the kind of handshake designed to convey authority. His office had floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city, and Ian could see the hospital where he worked, tiny and distant from this height. "Please, sit." Hartwell gestured to a chair that probably cost more than Ian made in a month. "Coffee?" "I'm good." "This must be overwhelming." Ian said nothing. Overwhelming didn't begin to cover it. Hartwell opened a thick file and spread papers across the mahogany desk. Birth certificates, hospital records, DNA analysis results. And at the bottom, a photograph of a man Ian had never seen but whose eyes looked familiar in the mirror. "Robert Franklin Thompson," Hartwell said. "Your biological father. He was 62 when he passed. Heart attack, very sudden." Ian picked up the photograph. The man was Asian Chinese, Ian guessed, with kind eyes and graying hair. He was standing in front of what looked like a restaurant, arms crossed, smiling slightly. "He knew about me?" "He's known for years. Had a private investigator track you down when you turned 18, but—" Hartwell paused, choosing his words carefully. "He made some choices early in life that he regretted. He thought it was better to stay away." "What kind of choices?" "That's not my story to tell, but he left you this." Hartwell slid an envelope across the desk. Ian's name was written on it in careful handwriting. Inside was a single sheet of paper, covered in the same neat script. "Ian, I know you have every right to be angry. I should have been there. Should have helped raise you. Should have given you the life you deserved instead of leaving you to figure it out alone. I was young and stupid and scared, and by the time I wasn't those things anymore, I thought too much time had passed. I thought maybe you were better off without the complications I would bring. I was wrong about that, but I was right about one thing: you turned out to be a better man than I ever was. I've been watching from a distance. I know about Lily. I know how hard you work, how much you sacrifice for her. You're the father I never was. I can't give you back the years we lost, but I can give you something else: freedom, security. The chance to be present for your daughter in ways I never was for you. The restaurant is yours now. The house is yours. Everything I built, everything I saved it, all goes to you and Lily. Not because I think money fixes anything, but because you shouldn't have to choose between being a good father and paying the rent. I'm sorry I was too much of a coward to say this in person. Your father—" Robert Ian read the letter twice before looking up. Hartwell was watching him with the careful expression of someone who'd delivered this kind of news before. "The restaurant?" "Golden Dragon. Downtown, near the waterfront. It's been closed since Robert's death, but it was quite successful. He also owned the building." "And a house?" "In Maple Heights. 4 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, paid off." Hartwell slid another set of papers across the desk. "The total estate value is approximately $2.3 million. The number didn't make sense." Ian stared at it written on the paper, but it might as well have been hieroglyphics. "There are some conditions," Hartwell continued. "Nothing onerous. He wanted to ensure Lily's education was fully funded. There's a separate trust set up for that. And he requested that you keep the restaurant's name, though what you do with the business itself is entirely up to you." Ian set the letter down carefully, as if it might disintegrate. "This isn't real. I understand the shock. It's a significant change." "No, you don't understand." Ian stood up, pacing to the window. "The hospital looked even smaller from here. People like me don't get $2.3 million. People like me get eviction notices and credit card debt and worry about whether their kid has enough lunch money. Mr. Thompson, I clean floors for a living. I buy groceries with coupons and pray my car starts every morning. Yesterday I was counting quarters for laundry money. This doesn't happen to people like me." Hartwell's expression softened slightly. "Robert said you'd react this way." "He said what?" "He said you wouldn't believe you deserved it, that you'd try to find reasons why it couldn't be real." Hartwell pulled out another envelope. "He left this for when you got to that part." Ian opened it with shaking hands. "Ian, by now you're probably convinced this is too good to be true. You're probably looking for the catch, or wondering what you did to deserve it, or thinking about giving it all away because you don't feel worthy of it. Stop. You've earned this. Not through blood or DNA or because we share a name, but because of who you became despite everything stacked against you. You've earned it every time you worked a double shift so Lily could have something she needed. Every time you went without so she wouldn't have to. Every time you chose to be the father I never was. Take it. Use it. Give Lily the life she deserves and the life you deserved but never got. And maybe, If you can find it in yourself to forgive a coward, visit my grave sometime and tell me how she's doing in college." Robert, the letter blurred. Ian wiped his eyes quickly, but not before Hartwell noticed. "There's no rush on any decisions," the lawyer said gently. "The restaurant can stay closed while you figure things out. The house is empty but maintained. We can transfer everything gradually, at whatever pace feels comfortable." Ian turned back to the window. Somewhere out there, Lily was in school, probably wearing that too small jacket, probably telling her friends she didn't need anything when they talked about their weekend plans. What was he like? Robert? Quiet, hardworking. He came here with nothing when he was 20, built that restaurant from scratch. Never married, as far as I know. Very private man, but generous. He employed a lot of people over the years, always paid fair wages. Why didn't he ever reach out? Hartwell was quiet for a long moment. "I think he was ashamed. Of leaving your mother. Of not being there when you were born. And then as the years went by, I think he was afraid you'd reject him. Especially after he found out how well you were doing raising Lily on your own. Well, Mr. Thompson, he was proud of you. Incredibly proud. He had photos." "Photos?" Hartwell opened another folder. "School pictures of Lily, from kindergarten through last year. Ian pushing her on a swing at the park near their apartment. The two of them at her middle school graduation, both grinning despite Ian's thrift store suit. How did he hired someone to take pictures occasionally. Nothing invasive, nothing inappropriate. Just a father wanting to see his son's life from a distance." Ian sat down heavily. 8 years of struggling, of counting every penny, of lying awake at night wondering how he'd make rent, or whether Lily would have to change schools again. And somewhere across town, a stranger who shared his DNA had been watching, caring, building a fortune he'd never known existed. "I need to think about this." "Of course. Take all the time you need. Here's my card, and here are the keys to the restaurant and the house. No pressure to decide anything today." The keys felt warm in Ian's palm. Heavy. "Mr. Thompson, one more thing. Robert left instructions that if you accepted the inheritance, there was something else he wanted you to have." Hartwell pulled out a small wooden box. Inside was a simple gold watch and another note. "This was my father's watch. The only thing I brought with me from China. I always planned to give it to my son someday." Better late than never. Ian held the watch up to the light. It was old, scratched, but still ticking. "I have to go," he said suddenly. "I have to pick up Lily from school." "Of course. Call me when you're ready to talk next steps." In the elevator, Ian stared at his reflection in the polished doors. Same face, same clothes, same calloused hands. But something had shifted, some fundamental understanding of who he was and where he came from. He had a father. Had a father who'd watched from the shadows and cared enough to leave him everything. The parking garage was quiet except for the echo of his footsteps. As he walked toward his beat-up Honda, Ian pulled out his phone and called the hospital. "This is Ian Thompson. I need to talk to my supervisor about changing my schedule." "What kind of change, Ian?" He looked at the keys in his other hand. House keys, restaurant keys. Keys to a life he'd never imagined possible. "I think I might be taking some time off." Lily was waiting by the school's front entrance when Ian pulled up, backpack slung over one shoulder, that too small jacket zipped to her chin despite the mild afternoon. She slid into the passenger seat with the easy grace of someone who'd been riding shotgun since she was tall enough to see over the dashboard. "You're early," she said, buckling her seatbelt. "Did your appointment go okay?" Ian gripped the steering wheel tighter. The lawyer's keys were burning a hole in his jacket pocket, along with documents that could change everything. "But how did you tell your 14-year-old daughter that you'd just inherited enough money to solve every problem they'd ever had?" "It went fine. How was school?" "Same as always. Mrs. Patterson assigned another essay about our family history." Lily stared out the window. "I told her I'd write about you instead. About how you raised me by yourself." The words hit him sideways. Ian had to clear his throat before he could respond. "What did she say?" "That it sounded like a good story. They drove in comfortable silence for a few blocks. This was their routine pickup from school, quick stop at the grocery store if they needed anything, home to their small apartment where Lily would do homework at the Kit Franklin table while Ian figured out dinner from whatever was in the fridge. But today felt different. Today, Ian kept glancing at his daughter and seeing not just the teenager she was, but the little girl who used to fall asleep in his lap during late-night shifts when he couldn't find a babysitter. The child who'd never complained about hand-me-down clothes or generic cereal or the fact that her father worked nights and slept through most of her school plays. "Dad? You're being weird." "What do you mean? You keep looking at me like I'm going to disappear or something." Ian pulled into their apartment complex and parked in their usual spot. The building was old, paint peeling on the exterior walls, but it was home. Had been home for 3 years, the longest they'd lived anywhere since Lily was born. "Lily, we need to talk about something." Her face went carefully neutral, the expression she wore whenever she was bracing for bad news. New city, new school, eviction notice. They'd weathered all of it before. "Are we moving again?" "I don't know yet, maybe. But it would be different this time." They climbed the stairs to their second-floor apartment. Ian unlocked the door, and they stepped into the small living room that doubled as his bedroom, the couch that folded out every night, the Kit Franklin table that wobbled unless you put a folded napkin under one leg. Lily dropped her backpack by the door and turned to face him. "Just tell me, Dad. Whatever it is." Ian sat down heavily on the couch. The lawyer's envelope felt impossible to hold, too significant for their small apartment with its second-hand furniture and carefully managed chaos. "I found out something today about my father." Lily's eyebrows shot up. In 14 years, Ian had never talked about his biological parents. There'd never been anything to say. "Your father? But you don't know." "I didn't know. But he knew about me, about us." Ian pulled out the letter, hands still unsteady. "He died a few weeks ago, and he left us something." "Left us what?" "Money. A lot of money. And a house. And a restaurant." Lily stared at him. "How much money?" "Enough that you never have to worry about new clothes again. Enough that I don't have to work nights anymore. Enough for college, for whatever you want to study, wherever you want to go." The silence stretched between them. Lily sat down on the opposite end of the couch, as far from him as the small space allowed. "This is a joke, right?" "No joke. Dad, people like us don't just inherit millions of dollars." Ian almost smiled at the echo of his own words from that morning. "That's what I said too. How much exactly?" $2.3 million. Lily's mouth fell open, then she closed it, opened it again. "Million? With an M?" "With an M." She was quiet for a long time, staring at her hands. When she finally looked up, her eyes were suspicious. "What's the catch?" "What do you mean?" "There's always a catch, Dad. When Mrs. Rodriguez offered to lower our rent, she wanted you to fix everyone's plumbing for free. When that guy at the grocery store said he'd give us a discount, he wanted your phone number. What does this person want from us?" Ian felt something break open in his chest. His 14-year-old daughter had learned to be suspicious of good fortune because in their world, good fortune always came with strings attached. "He's dead, Lily. He doesn't want anything." "Then why now? Why didn't he help when you were struggling to raise a baby by yourself? Why didn't he help when we got evicted from the place on Oak Street? Why didn't he help when you were working 3 jobs and still couldn't afford my school supplies?" Each question hit like a physical blow because they were all questions Ian had been asking himself. "I don't know. He said in his letter that he was scared. That he thought we were better off without him. That's bullshit." "Lily." "No, Dad, it is. You don't get to abandon someone and then swoop in with money after they've done all the hard work of growing up." Ian looked at his daughter, really looked at her. When had she gotten so wise? When had she started protecting him instead of the other way around? "You're right," he said quietly. "It is bullshit. So we're not taking it?" The question hung in the air. Ian thought about the keys in his pocket, about the restaurant he'd never seen, about the house in Maple Heights with 4 bedrooms and 2.5 baths. He thought about Lily's jacket with its 2 short sleeves, and the electricity bill sitting unopened on the Kit Franklin counter because he wasn't ready to face the number. I don't know what we're doing yet. Lily nodded, as if that was the answer she'd expected. Can I see the letter? Ian handed it over and watched her read. Her expression didn't change, but he saw her wipe her eyes quickly when she finished. He knew about my middle school graduation? Apparently he knew about a lot of things. That's creepy. Maybe. Or maybe it's what fathers do when they can't figure out how to actually be fathers. Lily folded the letter carefully and handed it back. What kind of restaurant? Chinese. Golden Dragon. Downtown. Is it any good? I have no idea. We should go look at it. Ian blinked. We should? Yeah. I mean, if we're going to inherit a restaurant, we should probably see what we're inheriting, right? There was something in her voice, curiosity mixed with caution, hope tempered by years of disappointment. Ian recognized it because he felt it too. You want to see the house too? Maybe. After the restaurant. Ian pulled out his phone and looked up the address. Golden Dragon was only 20 minutes away, in the part of downtown he rarely visited because it was full of restaurants and shops they couldn't afford. You hungry? He asked. I'm always hungry. Want to get dinner downtown? Lily looked at him with those two knowing eyes, but this time there was something lighter in them. Something that might have been excitement. Are you buying dinner with inheritance money? I'm buying dinner with the $20 in my wallet, same as always. Good. I'm not ready for rich people food yet. Ian laughed, surprising himself. When was the last time he'd laughed? Really laughed, not just the tired chuckle he gave Lily when she made jokes to cheer him up. Come on then. Let's go see what we inherited. They walked back down to the car, and Ian realized something had shifted between them. Not the fundamental trust that had carried them through 8 years of making it work, but something newer. A partnership in facing whatever came next. As they drove toward downtown, Lily was quiet, looking out the window at the familiar streets that might not be their neighborhood much longer. Dad? Yeah? Whatever we decide about the money, about moving, about everything, we decide together. Okay? Ian reached over and squeezed her hand. Together. The Golden Dragon sat on a corner lot near the waterfront, its red and gold sign dark against the afternoon sky. Even closed, even with newspapers covering the windows, it looked substantial, established. The kind of place that had fed families for decades. Ian parked across the street, and they sat in the car, staring at the building that belonged to them now. It's bigger than I thought it would be, Lily said. Yeah. Do you think he was happy here? Your father? Ian looked at the restaurant, trying to imagine the man from the photograph standing in front of it, arms crossed, smiling slightly. I hope so. Me too. They sat there as the afternoon light began to fade, father and daughter. Looking at the first gift either of them had ever received from the grandfather Lily would never meet. Tomorrow they would make decisions. Tomorrow they would figure out what to do with houses and restaurants and more money than they'd ever dreamed of having. But tonight, they were still themselves. Still Ian and Lily Thompson, still figuring it out as they went along, still choosing each other over everything else. Some things, Ian thought, shouldn't change just because your bank account did. The key turned easier than Ian had expected. He pushed open the door to Golden Dragon and was hit immediately by the smell of old cooking oil and something else, something warm and faintly sweet, that he couldn't identify. Lily stepped in behind him, her phone's flashlight cutting through the darkness. There's a light switch somewhere, Ian muttered, feeling along the wall. The overhead lights flickered on, revealing a dining room that was larger than their entire apartment. Round tables covered with white tablecloths, each set for 8. Red booth seating along the walls. A small stage in the corner where someone might have played piano on weekend nights, but it was the walls that made Ian stop breathing. Photographs everywhere, dozens of them, maybe hundreds. Families celebrating birthdays, anniversaries, graduations, children growing up table by table, year by year. A community's worth of memories preserved in frames that lined every available surface. Dad. Lily's voice was soft. Look, she was standing by the register, pointing at a corner of the wall where the photos were different. These weren't customers. These were Ian and Lily. Ian pushing a 5-year-old Lily on a swing, the two of them walking out of her elementary school, his work uniform visible under his jacket. Lily's 6th grade science fair, where she'd won 2nd place for her project on renewable energy. Ian hadn't even known anyone was taking pictures. "This is so weird," Lily whispered. "Yeah," but Ian found himself studying the photos more closely. They weren't invasive shots, nothing that felt like stalking. They looked like the pictures a proud grandfather might take if he'd been allowed to be part of their lives. Birthday parties he'd never been invited to, school events he'd never known about, ordinary moments that had been extraordinary to someone watching from a distance. "There's more back here," Lily called. She'd wandered behind the counter into what was clearly the Kit Franklin. Industrial stoves, walk-in cooler, prep stations that looked like they could feed an army. Everything was clean, well-maintained, waiting. Ian found himself touching the surfaces, running his hands over cutting boards worn smooth by years of use. This was where Robert had worked. Where he'd built something from nothing, the same way Ian had built a life with Lily. "Dad, come look at this." Lily was standing by a small office tucked behind the Kit Franklin. The door was open, revealing a desk covered with papers, a computer that looked newer than anything Ian had ever owned, and more photographs. But these were different. These were old formal portraits. A young Asian man in what looked like 1970s clothing, standing next to a woman Ian didn't recognize. Wedding photos, maybe, though something about the woman's posture suggested it hadn't been a happy marriage. And then, at the center of the desk, a birth certificate. Ian Franklin Thompson. Father, Robert Franklin Thompson. Mother, Susan Marie Walsh. Ian stared at the paper. He'd never seen his original birth certificate, only the amended version from social services that listed unknown for his father. But here was proof of what the DNA test had already confirmed. Here was his name, in his father's handwriting, preserved all these years. "Your middle name is Franklin?" Lily asked. "Apparently. That's Chinese, right?" "I think so." Ian sat down in Robert's chair. The desk drawers were unlocked, filled with restaurant receipts, vendor contracts, tax documents, the ordinary paperwork of running a business. But in the bottom drawer, he found something else. A journal. The entries were dated, going back almost 15 years. Ian opened to a random page. March 15, 2010. Ian got promoted to night supervisor at the hospital. "I heard one of the nurses talking about it when I went for my physical. She said he's the hardest worker they have, never misses a shift, always volunteers for overtime." I wanted to congratulate him, but what would I say? "Hello, I'm the father who abandoned you, but I'm proud of your janitorial advancement. Lily lost her first tooth today." I saw Ian walking her home from school, and she was grinning with that gap-toothed smile. He stopped at the pharmacy and bought her a small toy from the impulse rack by the register. Probably cost him $5 he couldn't afford, but he wanted to make losing a tooth special. I put $500 in the college fund I started for her. It's not much, but it's something. Ian flipped ahead. September 3, 2014, first day of high school for Lily. She's grown so tall, looks more like Susan every year. Ian bought her new school supplies. I watched him count out exact change at the store, buying the generic brands of everything except the calculator she needed for math class. That one he splurged on. She's smart. Got into the honors program. Ian was trying not to cry when he hugged her goodbye at the school entrance. "I want to help with her college expenses, but how do you send anonymous money without it looking suspicious? Maybe through the school guidance counselor? I need to think about this." "Dad?" Lily was reading over his shoulder. "He was watching us for years." "Yeah, that's..." She paused, looking for the right word. "Sad. Really sad." Ian kept reading. December 20, 2018. Ian got laid off from his second job. I saw him at the unemployment office filling out paperwork. He looked exhausted. "Lily doesn't know yet's trying to figure out how to handle Christmas without any extra income. I want to help. I could send an anonymous gift card, claim it's from the community center or something. But I'm a coward, same as always. The entries went on for years, Robert documenting their struggles, their small victories, the way Ian had raised Lily with nothing but determination and love. It was like reading their life from the perspective of a ghost, someone who cared deeply but couldn't figure out how to make himself real. Why didn't he just introduce himself? Lily asked. Ian closed the journal. I don't know. But as he looked around the office at the photographs, the carefully kept records, the evidence of a man who'd built a successful business while watching his son struggle, Ian thought he understood. Robert had made a choice when Ian was born. Maybe it was the right choice at the time, maybe it wasn't. But once made, it became harder and harder to unmake. How do you insert yourself into someone's life after 8 years? 15 years? How do you explain that you've been caring from a distance when what they needed was someone caring up close? I'm hungry, Lily said suddenly. There's that pizza place we passed on the way here. No, I mean, is there food here, in the restaurant? Ian looked at her. You want to cook here? I want to see if we can. If this is ours now, shouldn't we know if it actually works? The walk-in cooler was empty, except for some basic condiments and a few vegetables that would need to be thrown away. But the pantry was well stocked with rice, noodles, canned goods, spices Ian had never heard of. I don't know how to cook Chinese food, he said. Neither do I, but there's rice, and there's vegetables, and there's... Lily was rummaging through the spice rack. Soy sauce. How hard can it be? It was harder than they thought. The industrial stove took some figuring out, and neither of them knew what half the spices were for. But slowly, clumsily, they managed to put together something that resembled fried rice. It wasn't good. The rice was a little mushy, the vegetables were overcooked, and Ian had been heavy-handed with the soy sauce. But sitting at one of the round tables, eating food they'd made in their inherited Kit Franklin, something shifted. This place could be amazing, Lily said, looking around the dining room. If someone knew what they were doing. Neither of us knows what we're doing. We could learn. Ian studied his daughter. You want to run a restaurant? I don't know. Maybe. Or maybe we sell it and use the money for something else. But Dad, look at this place. Look at all these pictures. People loved coming here. That means something, right? Ian looked at the walls covered with memories, at the evidence of Robert's life spent serving a community that had become family, at the carefully maintained equipment, the recipes probably hidden somewhere in the office, the foundation of something that had worked for decades. It means something, he agreed. They ate their terrible fried rice and talked about possibilities. Lily wanted to research Chinese cooking techniques. Ian wondered if any of Robert's former employees might want to come back, might be willing to teach them what they didn't know. We don't have to decide anything tonight. Lily said eventually, No, we don't. But as they cleaned up their dishes in the professional-grade kit, Ian realized they were already deciding. They were already imagining themselves here, already thinking about how to honor what Robert had built while making it their own. Outside, the city lights reflected off the water. Ian locked the restaurant door, and they stood on the sidewalk, looking back at the building that might become their future. Ready to see the house? He asked. Lily nodded. Ready. As they drove toward Maple Heights, Ian thought about the journal entries, about years of watching from a distance, about love that hadn't known how to make itself known until it was too late. Maybe that was what inheritance really meant. Not just money or property, but the chance to do things differently. The chance to be present instead of absent, to choose courage over fear, to build something together instead of watching from the shadows. The house, when they found it, was everything the lawyer had promised. 4 bedrooms, manicured lawn, the kind of neighborhood where kids rode bikes on quiet streets and families knew each other's names. It's huge, Lily breathed. Yeah, I could have my own room, my own bathroom. You could have 2 rooms if you wanted. They sat in the car looking at the house that could be theirs, and Ian felt the weight of Robert's final gift settling around them. Not just financial security, but choice. The choice to stay or go, to keep the restaurant or sell it, to build on what Robert had started or create something entirely new. Dad? Yeah? I think I understand why he watched us instead of just introducing himself. Yeah? He was afraid we wouldn't want him. After all that time, after everything we'd been through without him, he was afraid we'd say it was too late. Ian looked at his daughter, wise beyond her years, generous enough to forgive a grandfather she'd never meet. Would we have said it was too late? Lily was quiet for a long moment. I don't know. But I'm glad we'll never have to find out. 3 months later, Ian stood in the cemetery, holding a cup of coffee that had gone cold 20 minutes ago. The headstone was simple granite, just Robert's name and dates, but someone had left fresh flowers. Ian wondered who else had loved his father, who else was mourning him. I brought Lily, he said to the stone. She's at school, but I told her about you, about this place. The morning was crisp, early November, and Ian could see his breath when he spoke. He'd been coming here every few weeks since they'd moved into the house, never quite sure what to say but needing to say something. We reopened the restaurant last week. That was the real news, the thing he'd been saving up to share. Golden Dragon was alive again, serving customers, filling up with the sound of families and friends and celebrations. It had taken 3 months of 17-hour days, YouTube cooking tutorials, and help from Mrs. Franklin Roberts' former sous chef, who'd agreed to come back and teach them everything she knew. Lily's gotten pretty good at making dumplings. Better than me, but don't tell her I said that. The wind picked up, rustling the leaves that had fallen around the headstone. Ian pulled his jacket tighter, not the thrift store windbreaker he'd worn for years, but a real winter coat. He could afford real winter coats now, though he still found himself checking price tags out of habit. I keep thinking you would have liked to see her in the Kit Franklin. She's got this way of concentrating when she's working with her hands, tongue poking out a little bit, same as when she used to do her homework at our old Kit Franklin table. A family walked by on the path behind him, their voices low and respectful. Ian waited until they passed before continuing. The house is good. Lily has her own room, her own bathroom like she wanted. She's got friends coming over now, which is new. I think she was always embarrassed before, about where we lived. Now she has kids over for dinner and I cook for them. Real food, not just mac and cheese from a box. He paused, thinking about the previous Saturday night when Lily had invited 3 friends for a sleepover. Ian had made them homemade lo mein and listened to them laugh from the Kit Franklin, a sound he'd never heard in their old apartment. She's applying to colleges now. Early admission to Northwestern, can you believe that? She wants to study business and culinary arts. Says she wants to learn how to run restaurants properly, not just wing it like her dad. The coffee was definitely cold now, but Ian took a sip anyway. I quit the hospital job, gave my 2 weeks' notice and everything. Cheryl from the nurses' station cried a little, said she'd never seen anyone work as hard as I did. He laughed quietly. Funny thing is, I miss it sometimes. Not the night shifts or the cleaning supplies, but the routine, the simplicity of it. Running a restaurant was complicated in ways Ian had never imagined. Vendors and permits and staff schedules and customer complaints and equipment that broke down at the worst possible moments. Some nights he fell into bed exhausted in ways he'd never been tired when he was just mopping floors. But it was different exhaustion, the tiredness of building something instead of just maintaining it. We had our first really busy Saturday last week. Line out the door, every table full. I was in the Kit Franklin trying to keep up with orders and I heard Lily in the dining room talking to this elderly couple about their anniversary. She remembered they'd been married 53 years. Remembered they always order the same thing. She's got your eye for details, I think. Ian set the coffee cup on the ground and pulled out his phone. He'd started taking picturesque not from a distance like Robert had, but up close. Lily laughing in the Kit Franklin, covered in flour. The staff meal they shared every evening before service. The wall of new photographs that was slowly filling up with fresh memories. I brought something to show you. He scrolled to a photo from the previous week. Lily standing behind the register, wearing the apron Mrs. Franklin had made her, grinning at the camera with flour in her hair and joy on her face. She's happy, Ian said to the headstone. Really happy. Not just pretending. Everything is fine happy, but actually happy. You should see her when she talks about the restaurant. She's got ideas, wants to add a weekend dim sum service, wants to start a cooking class for kids. She's thinking bigger than I ever learned how to think." A squirrel approached cautiously, probably hoping for crumbs from Ian's forgotten breakfast. Ian broke off a piece of his muffin and tossed it over. "I've been thinking about forgiveness," he said, "about what it means, and whether it's something you give or something you choose, or something that just happens when you're not paying attention." He was quiet for a moment, watching the squirrel. "Lily forgave you before I did, maybe because she never felt abandoned by you the way I did. Or maybe because she's 14 and forgiveness comes easier when you're 14. Ian thought about the conversation they'd had the night before, when Lily had asked if they could put some of Robert's pictures up in the restaurant, not the ones of them, but the ones of him. The young man who'd come to America with nothing, the older man who'd built something lasting. "But I think I understand now why you stayed away. It wasn't because you didn't love us. It was because you loved us too much to risk screwing it up again." The words felt true as he said them, though he wasn't sure when he'd started believing them. "I would have liked to know you," Ian continued. "Would have liked Lily to know her grandfather. But I'm grateful for what you gave us. Not just the money, though. Don't think I don't appreciate the hell out of not worrying about rent anymore, but the chance to build something together. The chance to be partners instead of just parent and child." A groundskeeper was working nearby, raking leaves with the patient rhythm of someone who'd done this job for years. Ian recognized the steadiness of it, the satisfaction of work that left visible results. "Lily wants to come with me next time. She says she wants to tell you about her college applications, about the restaurant, about everything. I told her you would have liked that." Ian picked up his coffee cup, now completely cold. "She asked me if I think you can hear us when we talk to you here. I told her I don't know, but that maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe the important thing is that we need to say it, whether you can hear it or not." He looked at the headstone, at the simple dates that bracketed a life he'd never really known. "Thank you," he said finally, "for watching, for caring, for leaving us something better than what you found, for giving Lily chances I never had." The wind picked up again, carrying the smell of autumn and the distant sound of traffic. Ian zipped his jacket and turned to leave, then stopped. "Oh, and Dad? We're thinking about opening for lunch service next month. Lily's idea. She says we're leaving money on the table, only being open for dinner." He smiled. "She definitely gets the business sense from you." Walking back to his Carnot, the beat-up Honda, but a reliable used SUV that started every time and had heat that worked. Ian felt something settle that had been unsettled for months. Robert had made his choices, and Ian had made his, and Lily would make hers. That was how families worked, apparently. Not just the ones you were born into, but the ones you chose to build, the ones you inherited and decided to honor. His phone buzzed with a text from Lily. "How's your visit going? Mrs. Franklin wants to know if you'll be back in time for the lunch prep meeting." Ian typed back. "On my way. Tell her I'll stop for those good soy sauce packets she likes. The expensive ones?" Ian paused before answering, thinking about a time when expensive soy sauce packets would have been an impossible luxury. The expensive ones. "Love you, Dad. Love you too, kiddo." He drove toward downtown, toward the restaurant that was theirs now, toward the life they were building one day at a time. In the rearview mirror, the cemetery grew smaller, but Ian knew he'd be back. There were more stories to tell, more updates to share, more gratitude to offer to the father who'd loved them the only way he knew how. The Golden Dragon sign was visible from 3 blocks away, red and gold against the gray November sky. Ian could see people already waiting for the lunch service that wouldn't start for another hour. He could see Lily through the front window, arranging flowers on the tables, with the same careful attention Robert had probably given to every detail. When he parked and walked toward the entrance, Lily looked up and waved, her face bright with the kind of excitement that came from work you loved. Ian waved back and thought about inheritance, just money or property, but purpose passed from one generation to the next. Love, expressed in the language of second chances, and trust, placed in futures you wouldn't live to see. The door opened before he reached it, and Lily stepped out with that gap-toothed grin she'd never quite grown out of. "Ready for lunch service?" she asked. "Ready," Ian said, and meant it. Together, they walked into the restaurant that was theirs, into the life they'd chosen to build on the foundation someone else had laid, into whatever came next. Some gifts, Ian thought, took time to unwrap completely. But they were worth the wait.